Our guest speaker this morning is Colin Stafford-Johnston, and Colin is a renowned wildlife and natural history person. Over the past decade he has travelled the world tracking animals and all kinds of wildlife. He has won an Emmy Award and he has worked with the world-renowned David Attenborough. To most of us here, though, he's probably better known for his programme on RTE1, Call of the Wild, Living the Wildlife. Living the Wildlife. I'm sure you all know it, where we could see him. One day he could be watching badgers, and the next day it could be natter toads or basking sharks somewhere. So I'll hand you over to Colin to say a few words to us.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. In fact, I was working very early this morning, all because of Wendy Stringer over there, who's one of your ex-gardeners. I was speaking to Wendy on the phone yesterday, and the first thing she said to me was, I hear you opening this thing tomorrow. I said, don't be late. In the middle of the conversation, she said, now you won't be late tomorrow, will you? So I ended up setting my alarm clock for 4:45 this morning, and I thought I might as well go filming. So I was filming fox cubs at 5 o'clock this morning, and did those for an hour and got some nice shots, so thanks to Wendy. But anyway, I hear her garden's a little overgrown this year, not on the trail, but anyway, there's more of that later. But anyway, look, thanks for coming. I've sort of had a long association with gardening, as it were. My dad was the first TV gardener in Ireland back in the 70s. His name was Barney Johnson. I don't know if any of you remember him, but then unfortunately he passed away about 1979. But I grew up in a garden centre and nurseries. So we were surrounded in South County Dublin by about 10 acres of plants. And so it's funny, every garden centre in the world smells the same. You come in here and there's a smell in the air that somehow they all smell the same. I remember our garden centre had this very same atmosphere. But I've just been looking through the brochure here, and you know, the gardens, it strikes me that all the gardens of the trail, on the trail, have something sort of different and unique to offer. There's something, I think they're a great source of inspiration for people. A lot of people don't get exposed to gardening really in any way these days, maybe just from TV programmes, and who needs those. But so I think it's a great opportunity for people to get out and see. I remember someone said to me years ago, if you ever want to plant a garden, the best thing is to go around the area where you intend, if you have a garden in a particular area, you go around to all the neighbouring gardens and see what's thriving there. And I always thought that was great advice. So if you go to a place and you see that a tree or a shrub or a plant is doing really, really well, that's the thing that's the kind of thing you should plant, because there's nothing worse than a struggling plant, I always think. But for me too, I guess gardens over the years, my relationship with them has changed a little bit. I come now very much from a personal angle of sort of biodiversity. I believe everything in the garden should be edible, be it by plant or animal. A plant that isn't being eaten by an insect is neither good to man nor beast, in my opinion. If you go walking in a woodland or a forest, you don't worry about leaves having holes in them. And I don't think we should mind too much in gardening either. And you never walk through a woodland and think, wouldn't it be so much better if there were no insects in this place? Because insects and hoverflies and bees add, I think you should be able to hear a garden, not just see it. And some of the gardens I've heard about here, I know there are a couple of organic ones, I'm all for those, but I know some wonderful inorganic ones too. And but I think if everyone can find a little space, or preferably a big space in the garden, where they keep wildlife in mind, because people often say to me, I've worked, say, in tiger conservation for the last 20 years, and you know, there's only so much that you or I maybe can do about saving a big animal like that, but there's an awful lot that we can do about saving bumblebees and butterflies and hoverflies and ants and all the little things that slither and crawl. And within a garden, one can do that. It doesn't have to be big. It's amazing. I was in the garden last year in County Wicklow. It belongs to a chap called Angus Tynan. He said he spent 60 quid in his garden, and everything in this is native. And he's got the highest dragonfly count in the country. He built a pond about 12 years ago. He said he got a bulldozer in for 4 hours. And now he has the highest dragonfly count in the country. And it just struck me how you have these populations of animals going through their entire lives in this place. And it looks fantastic. So for me, that's the real, personally, that's for me is the real challenge in gardening. If you can integrate something that can look beautiful, but there's also has a high wildlife value to it as well, because for me it's just a great opportunity. We're given a little bit, or we buy a little bit of biosphere, you know, and that we're responsible for it. And it lasts, most of the biosphere, the places where life exists in the entire universe, as far as we know, is just from the soil to a couple of feet below, and really just a few feet above the ground. That's where most living things exist. And when we have a patch of land, if we treat it properly, we can get a vast amount of biodiversity growing in that place. A friend of mine recently said he'd found 2,000 living creatures living in this hedgerow. Pretty amazing, a native hedgerow. So, so anyway, a source of inspiration for fellow gardeners, I guess, because lots of people who are here are interested in gardens, so we can get ideas from each other, maybe steal the odd seed or the odd plant from each other. I'm sure that goes on. Wendy. And they're a great source of kids. I mean, I grew up, we had to grow all the veggies, had a big family. I've got to get better with this microphone, it's going in and out very annoyingly, isn't it?
No.
When I was a kid, we had to grow all our own veggies. We came from a family of, like 5 siblings, and we normally had 2 refugees living with us as well. So there'd be 9 to 10 people sitting around the table every night, and my brothers and I had to grow all our veggies. And I look back on that time very fondly. I don't have the time to grow them anymore. I'm sort of on the move all the time. So it's something I really regret, is not being able to see the annual cycle of a garden, because I'm always jumping around here, there, and everywhere. I was with someone just yesterday who was preparing the ground, they said, for peas. And just a few weeks ago, I was 15,000 feet in the Himalayas looking for snow leopards. And the people up there were planting peas, so that was kind of nice. And they had an interesting story too. They were telling me that in that area, 15,000 feet in the Himalayas up by the Chinese border, very remote, very hard to grow anything, but they grow wonderful peas there apparently. And they have a big red fox population. And the red foxes love to come in and eat their peas. And I said, oh right, and do they eat a lot of peas? I said, yeah, they eat loads of them. And I said, and what do you do? They said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, the foxes come and eat your peas. Do you do something? But it was much like the foxes have to eat too. So there was no concept that they would ever dream of harming any animal. It just was beyond their comprehension that I could even think that maybe they would like to do something about the foxes. And this is an area, in fact, where there are snow leopards. I reckon the snow leopards are safe too, when you've got people's attitudes who are pro-animal, pro-nature. It's great to see. But anyway, so specifically, well done to all the gardeners involved, because I know there's a huge amount of work. Some people haven't put in the work this year, Wendy Stringer, but maybe next year. But I know there's a huge amount of work involved, because I've done it myself, and it's a huge effort, and hopefully you'll be an inspiration to a lot of people this year. And it's great to be able to show off your efforts and be a source of inspiration for people who are new to it, and indeed old hands. So I won't go on anymore, I'll leave you to it. Thanks very much for having me, and all the best.
Okay, I'm ready. Whenever you're ready. Ready? Yes.
1 second.